Environmental Services, and also he's a junket at our School of Agricultural Resource Economics. His presentation is, first of all, Sutra for Environmental Monitoring and Compliance, Regulation, Remote Sensing, Information Management, and Product Development. And as usually, we have 35 minutes for talk, and I guess you can ask clarifying questions and keep all the questions for after that, and then we have 10 minutes for questions. Please welcome.
Ben sort of asked me to present something about remote sensing and expose the school to more of the remote sensing, and especially since remote sensing has developed quite significantly over the last 5 years. So the challenge of this talk really is to combine remote sensing with economics. So we'll give it a go. So pretty much this story revolves around iron ore in the Pilbara. We're into terrestrial monitoring, so iron ore is pretty much the industry that we service. West Australia, 1888, first discovered iron ore. It takes another 70 years before we actually start thinking about digging it out of the ground, and we actually have to lift a ban on exports to Japan, iron ore exports to Japan in 1960, and then in cooperation with the Japanese, then we start exporting our first iron ore to Japan in 1966. And from then on, for pretty much the next 40 years, it's a global one-year benchmark price system. So globally, at the start of the year, everybody gets to discuss the price. It's a big negotiation, can be quite costly, and they set the price, and then everybody abides by that price for every iron ore contract around the world for the rest of the year, and then they do it all over again the next year, I should say. So we'll just have a quick walk through this, and I've got quite a few slides, so I might be speedy at times. Just tell me to slow down. But it's a quick story. 2003, China is a major consumer. FMG is founded, and what you can sort of see is there's this period, the Rust Belt stagnation after the oil embargoes, and especially in the US, there's very little change in the demand for steel, and then things start getting interesting around 2003. In 2004, China starts trading on the spot price with India, and that's pretty much, it can't secure iron ore from elsewhere around the world. It can't acquire iron ore within the standard contract system because Japan and everybody else have taken up the contracts. 2008 was interesting because what's been happening here is the spot price actually went up, and then it came down again, and because the next negotiation was that the fixed price was going to go somewhere up there, and the spot price was below that, and the Chinese said, okay, that's silly, we want the lower price, and then they moved to the lower price. And then you have this big spike in the iron ore price. You have Stern-Hugh affair in 2009 while they're trying to negotiate prices, and eventually the whole industry says we're not going to benchmark any prices, and everybody's going to move to the spot price eventually. So, and then we have a price crash, and probably to hedge against some of the risk of a fairly volatile market, then derivatives are launched in 2013. So bit of boom and bust after the benchmark system was abandoned. You have an iron ore price dive, and we had one this year, $158.90 in February, $89 in June, just about halves the price. State government complains because it loses $50 million in revenue for every $2 decline in iron ore price, which accounts for about $1.6 billion inside 4 months that we don't get to spend on stadiums and stuff. So, and pretty much it's just classic economics, supply and demand. And no wonder the mining and construction boom is over. There's an oversupply of iron ore. There's no point opening up new mines. So getting back to environmental consultancies, and this talk is about environmental consultancies and what they actually have to face in the market. When we had that first price dive, which was in 2012, then some consultancies and business units shed up to 75% of their staff pretty much overnight. And then the next day, when you'd offer a job, a new position opening, you'd have 300 people applying for that one job. There was key mergers between consultancies. The small guys get bought out. And we're now in a situation where 8 of the top 10 environmental consultancies are subsidiaries of larger parent companies. And the main impact is because no new mines are being built, this is on greenfield development, and in general this has impacted on the botanical services that map rare and endangered flora the most. So what we sort of face is a type of gambler's ruin. Parent companies generally possess diversified resources which allow them to weather these fairly large price fluctuations. So that's the opposition that you're against if you're a small player. And to actually beat, or actually to keep yourself in the market, to keep your market share, you have to innovate, otherwise you get hurt. You lose staff, you lose sort of the elan of the company, and a whole pile of other things. So what do we do? Well, monitor and report any potential adverse impacts of resource extraction on the environment outside of designated impact zones. Okay, fairly simple task. There's lots of complexity to it, but in principle, this is pretty much it. It's driven by regulation, including ministerial conditions. So the incentive is not a price incentive. The incentive is actually, if you don't abide by it, then you don't get to participate in the industry, you don't get the opportunity to make profit. And the environmental consultancy sector can be valued at $150 to $250 million a year as income, or turnover, I should say. So what have we been doing in the past? Measuring leaves. Out of all the eucalyptus leaves in Western Australia, you choose these leaves to actually measure. No, it's not really that. They're actually taking measurements because they're going to what we call bomb them and just measure their leaf water potential or something to that effect. So that's pretty much what we do. Generally, environmental monitoring is but one compliance activity amongst a whole pile of other compliance activities, and generally it's seen as a poor cousin to the other activities, which is profit, safety, and environment. And pretty much where the environment gets a look in is because it affects the company's brand. So that's pretty much it. We don't have a big stick to whack them over the head with. So if we're talking about R&D, is R&D survival? Well, my opinion is pretty much it is. And the thing is, as a small player, you can sneak in, you can specialise, you can allocate your resources there and get in somewhere where a bigger player's kind of got the market covered. So, but the thing is, that tends to be an all or nothing effort. But the thing is, if you're developing something new, and the really hard thing about all this is that if you've got something new, or you want to try something new, or innovate something with the client, you've got to demonstrate value for the client. But how do you demonstrate value for something that hasn't been created yet, or hasn't been implemented yet? So Astron fiddles around with the whole pile of technology, and there's more here. This is article this week in the West. This is Ecoscape, and they've got a handheld tablet, so digital data capture, information management. This is a Chudich with a radio tracking collar. This is a motion detector camera, so whenever an animal walks in front of the camera, then a photo is taken and you can identify the animal from that. So that's used in fauna monitoring. They've just plugged this poor tree with a whole pile of thermocouples, and they pass heat through it pretty much every 30 seconds, and then that tells them how much water is flowing through the tree and how stressed the tree is. We can make use of other people's satellites. We work with drones, and you can go on. So there's heaps of options, and it's like really kind of dynamic industry to be in, because the technology, and this is across the board, is really novel and interesting. So I'll just talk about remote sensing and information platforms. I'll talk about R&D case studies, but it's kind of like where we've got to with these two technologies. So the first one is, this is a satellite image. It's captured at 0.5 metre. It's got 16 bands spectral information. The more bands you have, generally, the more you're able to discriminate what's in the picture. So this is a whole pile of mangroves up north. The question is, how many species of mangroves do you think is in there? So with a bit of fiddling around, you can say 3. So you got sort of lighter areas, you got darker areas, and then you got these little neon guys up here and in here. So we looked at this image and said, there's 3. We'll just go up there, we'll have a check on the ground and spot on. It's kind of like those 3 species were there, so that's like a proof of principle. But that's kind of the sort of thing that you can do with remote sensing. We're also, with the drones, into 3D photogrammetry. So this is a band of mine pit in the Murchison, and you can see the shrubs in there. You can pretty much pick out the detail. It's a little bit flush, the colour, but I think it's a chalk mine or something like that, so that makes life difficult. And you get that vertical representation as well as the spectral representation. So you've got even more information by which to discriminate what's there in the landscape. So generally, we're talking about vegetation, where the vegetation changes, and we talk about landform, where the landform changes. Like, this is what we've got to inform the client. We need to do bare ground extraction. So these are dunes off Whitfords in another sort of testing phase, and our ability to extract the bare ground from the underlying vegetation. So there's a few tricks that we use. And this is with a little EB. It's like that. It's made out of polystyrene foam, and you just, to start it, you just go, and it goes off. So, but once you've got that image, part of that process is you need to extract the vegetation from the image, and the finer scale of the imagery, and this is just off sort of a stubble and germination in a stubble, where is the plant material, and you can classify the shapes, and you can get different crops. They can get information, and the thing is, this technology is just starting to be developed in agriculture, where it's easy to apply, relatively speaking. In an environmental perspective, you've got lots of different species. It's a little bit harder. It's kind of a stopping point to technology, and it certainly off-puts some clients. But the main thing is, if we're talking about vegetation, well, first, if we're talking about landform, we can measure landform features. So that's a positive. If we've got that 3D surface, and we can measure parameters related to the vegetation. We can sort of do comparisons between different vegetation. This is the vertical height profile of older rehab and younger rehab, and you can sort of see that the older rehab is actually taller. So that's good, I think. But in order to put that value proposition forward to the client, what we need to do is be really clear as to what something costs and what it covers and the amount of information that you're getting from this. So this is Worldview 3 satellite. That's a tree, and the same tree with 5 centimetre resolution, which is what we're getting with our drones. The cost of an on-ground shoot is 30,000 times that of a satellite to get an estimate of vegetation cover. If it was something else, it would cost more. And in that costing, you wouldn't have any discrimination between different species. So we have that. UAV's relatively quite expensive. LiDAR is an airborne digital stereography, which is traditionally how most of the remote sensing information has been captured across Western Australia for mine sites, is competitive with satellite, and it's got a couple of advantages. But the main advantage of satellite is actually very consistent through time. Like, it's a reliable product. We can capture it pretty much every 4 days if we really want to, if you can afford it. And it gives you that time series. Whereas generally with the airborne stuff, different providers at different times, and not everything's compatible. So feasibility, is the remote sense metric actually a good thing? Does it perform better than the on-ground measure? So we've got a site and we can extract the features, which is the vegetation. There's a bit of misclassification going on there, but in the general, you're picking most of the features in that landscape. Generally, on-ground methods sort of put out a few quadrats, so line transects in this case, and they walk along the tape measure, and if a bush is there, then they sort of measure the bush, 50 centimetres worth of plant, 70 centimetres of gap, 25 centimetres of plant. It's joy. But they get an estimate of cover through that method. We can more or less instantaneously get a measure of cover. And if we were to look at sort of sampling error, then this is an on-ground metre with 50 metre transects and its estimate of cover, and its standard error. And this is with 100 metre transects. And generally the I guess industry standard is 2 for transects for that size site. And we're coming in at 0.01 with the remote sensed imagery, which is due to misclassification error. So that's pretty much it. So really, when you're talking about feasibility, does it measure better? And on the general, sampling error with UAV is very low. The measurement error, you've got to deal with observer bias, different teams going out there all the time. Here you've just got to deal with misclassification. That improves with the more information capture, 3D or more spectral information. And then you have edge effects, edge bias of where you locate your transects. And the thing is, if you can detect change accurately, you can actually respond to it, right? So that's one side of it. And then the other side of the feasibility is if you can actually demonstrate that you've got specificity, which is if you can distinguish the items in a landscape that you need to. So if you need to distinguish some particular weed, can you differentiate that from everything else? You can do that very well on ground. It's a bit more of a challenge with remote sensing. Okay, so I think that's what we'll say about that for the time being. So we'll talk about information platforms, how we're going. We've got a little bit more time, so that's good. So information platforms are prolific in other industries, and it's very good for analytics, storing data reliable, ensuring quality, and actually automating a lot of tasks. And the thing is, we're now, with all these technologies, actually going into an age where we're collecting lots more data, so it's kind of like a critical component. But, and I say this, I came as an ecologist, I came to the school, and I fiddle around with technology. But I can say this from my own experience, try asking an ecologist for the historical data. So can I have that tomorrow? Integrate similar data collected across different projects and by different ecologists, or apply a new analysis, and you might be waiting months, essentially. So we'll go to the demo, which is, I've got to log in remotely. There we go. So these are just a couple of examples of applications that we've been developing within Astron. Let's start with this one. So essentially this is a web mapping application, and what this is about finding all the files in your organisation. So essentially we can go somewhere around Tom Price. Ooh, cursor. And then we can click in there, we can do a search in there, we can look at fauna, and essentially we'll find all files with the fauna tag in it. So here we've got a report about fauna proposal. Don't look at this too closely because some of it's private and confidential information. But essentially we can locate the file. We can locate the file. Yeah, we're getting recorded? What's happening? And then we have tags. We know the budget from inside. This is our private information, and project title, who's been managing the title, what it runs from and to, and this gives us essentially information about that. And within here we can click on that and get that file instantaneously. So if you were to ask us, give us all the fauna data for a site, because that was that was search enabled, so you can do very sophisticated searches on that, then you'd get it up instantaneously. So a big cost saving to the business. And the other thing is just a quick demonstration of task automation. Again, web mapping application, you can load KMLs and area extents in there, but we'll just go in there. We'll zoom in a bit and hopefully we can find that again. Somewhere in South Australia. Having mouse troubles. And again, the connection, because I'm going through another machine to get here, it's not as responsive as what one would hope, but there we go. We can click in there. Essentially, we click on a layer, and we do this essentially for our clearing permits. We click on the layer, instantly all the pre-European vegetation classes come up. We go for a bit of a search in there, and this search just selects all those polygons relevant to that area of interest. So that's all selected, and then we want to do a report of what's in that area of extent compared to what's outside that area of extent, and it comes up pretty much instantaneously. Like before, that was like a 4-hour task, querying GIS layers. Now it's kind of like less than 5 minutes, and pretty much that's exportable to Excel, and away you go. So that's an example of information management. And we do other stuff, which is clicking on a point in the landscape where we've taken measurements and putting up control points and all that sort of stuff, but that is kind of confidential at the moment. So let's get back to here. So what I was hoping, this is where I throw some economics in, very poor, but essentially what's the management objective from the client's perspective? And the thing is, the clients, if you try and get them to elucidate this, very rarely are able to elucidate it for themselves. I mean, that's kind of one of the roles of consultants, is to facilitate that expression. So, and this is about monitoring. So M effort is monitoring effort, and A effort will come up, which is management action effort. And I've stolen this basically from Ben after my time with him. But essentially, you minimise the cost with respect to your monitoring effort and your active management on the ground, and it's equal to the cost of monitoring. There's kind of a bare minimum to that, but the question is, do you want to undertake more or not? And then we start getting to some sort of expression here. If you're monitoring for a given level of effort and there is an impact of the operations on the surrounding environment, what is your probability of detecting that impact? So times by the cost of the effort, managerial effort as a response, because you've said, yes, it is an impact. You're putting in effort, and then you've got a cost you've got to deal with given your level of on-ground effort as to your ameliorated impact. So, and we can do that for the other cases. You detect the impact, but actually there's no impact. Your device, whatever technology that you use to monitor, whether it's sampling bias or whether it's just misclassification or whatever root cause, you've falsely identified impact. So there's contingent costs with that. So essentially this is effort wasted. You have detect no impact when impact has actually occurred. So you've got a cost of unameliorated impact, which logically should be bigger than the ameliorated impact. And so that's pretty much it. And I guess from a technologist point of view rather than an economist's point of view, I'm very much into like, well, what is this? What are these probabilities? Not so much on the cost side, but the probabilities. So we can go to all sorts of extents. This is LiDAR. And essentially, when a LiDAR flies over, they've got different flight paths, so the plane's kind of flying all over the place. They tell us that it's optimised, but sometimes it occurs as a little bit strange. And you've got the scanner, so you get the waves in there, so it's a rotating mirror bouncing light beams. So you've got that. They have one flight path in 1 year, they have a different flight path in another year. And then when you go to calculate, and this is to estimate the height of the landform, you've got a different pooled standard error, which is a sort of combination of those two errors. And positionally, you've got higher error in these areas than elsewhere. So error from the device is spatially heterogeneous in estimating estimating the landform height. And the thing is, what you realise is when you sort of throw more points at it, like the ground is hit by the device more frequently, then this standard error actually comes down. So the frequency of LiDAR points hitting the ground is the same. That relates to the accuracy of your measure. You can also measure type 1 and type 2 error, and in the above equation, essentially these are different aspects of type 1 and type 2. And you can measure those, and this is just for classification of ground before you even get ground versus vegetation, before you even get into impact versus non-impact. And for this particular case, then the standard error was fairly high. So that's a bit of a small insight into what the technologist does to estimate some of these probabilities. But the thing is, it's a team effort. You need a technologist, you need somebody who values costs, and it's a decision problem, so very much within the domain of resource economics. And as a business, the management objective is used in making the pitch to a client's bottom line when introducing new technology. You don't phrase it that like how we phrased it, because we just lose them. I'm just assuming I haven't lost you. Yes. And you choose the technology that minimises the objective. If remote sensing performs best in that equation, go for remote sensing. If it doesn't, don't put it in there. So, or don't sell it to the client. So, and you need to demonstrate comprehensively the value gain. And then you need to pass it by the regulator and explain it all over again and hope that they get it. So there's a few barriers to getting innovations off the ground. But from the firm's perspective, we've got all those technologies, and which technology we choose. We're a small firm, we've only got that little bucket of money that we can spend. These technologies are starting to get costly. Like this previous error study, like that's $30,000. That's $30,000. There's some other stuff there, but we got asked to look at it and said 30,000. That's what it would cost the firm to do it in-house. So, and the options quickly proliferate. If you just look at drones, we have three possible drone platforms. We have three possible different sensors. We can apply 5 different processing methods to each of those 3 sensors. That's 30 possible technology options. Which one do you go for? Well, hopefully the one that provides the best value. And ideally, you'd marry all this to the client perspective. But for now, we have sort of work with the project development funnel. So we have a whole list of candidate projects. We have a selection filter, and then hope later down the track we have an evaluation filter until we get down to our few recommended projects, I guess. So you talk about business priority, development complexity, development priority, and then you try and give those priorities some numbers. Bit of a gambler's game, and then given those sort of numbers, costs, net, you can work out net benefit, the cost of the project, your expected return, and also some measure of risk, because you're talking about likelihoods of success and failure. So you can calculate some measure of risk, and generally there's lots of projects, so it can go ad infinitum. You can plot return, risk return, so those are all the candidate projects. And you can have your risk efficient frontier. So You always want to be on the risk-efficient frontier for a given level of risk. Any other project is going to provide less return, so if you're going to take on that risk, why take on that project with the lower return? You might as well go with the project that maximises your return. And you can add in a budget line, and that pretty much tells you, and say if you've got a large budget and you can take on a lot of risk, and woohoo, you can actually go for the higher return projects. So those are kind of the things that we're sort of working with at the moment. So back to the Fourfold Sutra, and I can't believe I actually did this within 35 minutes, but we have regulation, so monitoring is a must for clients. That's the thing that keeps us in business, and unfortunately a lot of it is long-term monitoring. If you do go into business, look for a long-term monitoring opportunity. Remote sensing is one technology amongst the mix of monitoring options, but we have enough faith in the product where we sort of say it's definitely a part of the future going forward, and yeah, and never neglect that it's amongst a mix. Information platforms, one platform to rule them all. You just want, as a business, go to one place, pull up all the data. Just imagine this for UWA. All the data that's at UWA. We go search, we've got everything on fauna for this area, or we've got everything on some aspect of agriculture here. So, and the volume of data is only increasing. We need to deal with that problem of information management. And product development, always risky, but a must for the survival of small players in a tight market. So, a few acknowledgements, and that's the end of the story.
Welcome questions.
I heard a figure quoted the other day, the value of agricultural production in WA is $5 billion, and the value of mine site rehabilitation was $4 to $6 billion. Is that a ballpark?
Yeah, I mean the wheat industry turnover in West Australia is about 5 billion or so, I believe, per annum, and iron ore just by itself, and it's the major share, is 31, 32 billion per annum. So whether they're spending 20% or on rehabilitation, I'm not wholly sure. I think probably the key concern with rehabilitation, and Mark might back this up, is that very little of it has actually succeeded, because there's been, when it's failed, there's been little incentive to actually go back and do it right. And without that sort of stick, they're not going to improve as fast as what you'd hope they would do in future. And the thing is, rehabilitation is a very complex thing. It's a technological, you need to find technological solutions to actually succeed at it, and you need to make the investment. And if they had $6 billion to invest, you would think some proportion they'd spend into actually improving rehab success. So, I don't know, half answers your question.
Thanks.
So the focus of the remote sensing, I gather, was for monitoring.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's thought for other types of users, improving decision making, improving the planning and design of projects and so on.
Yeah.
It could also feed into.
Oh, most definitely. So what I've just tried to show there is how you incorporate remote sense measures and the sort of uncertainty around them into a decision problem. So what I would hope is some of you would actually go away and have your own decision problems and actually apply sort of similar thinking if you did have a need to incorporate remote sensing into that process. So I'd say go for it. Yeah.
Just in the engagement with the regulator, is this a sort of formal process where there's some sort of way you can demonstrate the power to detect impacts? Is that how does that work when you need to pick? So if there's a condition, you need to detect some impact at a mine site or someone's dewatering, and you're trying to detect a change in the environment downstream or up somewhere. Is it you've got to come forward and say this method has this power to detect this impact, and is that an easy process or a difficult process?
So first of all, I'll say this is WA, and
Yeah.
a lot of what gets past the regulator is actually a process of discussion and a bit of who do you know. Is that correct? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the key things, so in some regulations, particularly in the marine space where they're really quite good, they actually specify we need to detect 20% change and have power 0.8. Okay, so you can work towards that. That's actually good for us because we can put that in. But one of the key things about terrestrial especially is the thinking of how to evaluate hasn't actually been given over to them, like it's not a part of their living and breathing. So that is a key challenge. Until that time, what we try and do is sell, well, this is the high profile thing, this is how you should evaluate everything in that one specific space. You shouldn't just be evaluating us because we've tuned our technology to actually satisfy that, but you should be evaluating everybody else. But we're sneaky about it, we use that to edge other people out if we can. Yeah.
In your cost function, I apologize because my background is in consulting in California, so I'm not familiar with WA. But so, your cost for unameliorated impact, how much of a role does government fines and penalties play in?
Either Ben or you want to answer that one?
None.
There's no
very,
stick.
very rare.
Yeah.
So there's almost no stick from government?
No.
Okay.
And that's part of our issue in pushing across the sort of superior innovative method is why.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that I'm wondering with that is where opportunity cost, because even if there's no penalty for unameliorated impacts, a lot of times what we would see in California is you'd see it would slow the process down, and so I wonder how the cost of slowing the process down.
Yeah.
So I mean, every time you slow it down, you're inflicting more cost. And
Yep.
budget
Yep.
goes up higher and
Yeah, that's when I sort of who's the valuing this thing
Yeah.
and start handballing it. Another thing is what's in here is brand damage.
Yeah.
So if it does go through the press, then you got to fix it up more or less to one extent, and that's probably the biggest stick in the whole process.
There's probably, I mean, for the mining companies, I think, and Mark could probably again comment more effectively on this, but they want to get off site. They want to have the mine site signed off so they don't have to continue sort of care and maintenance. But the other thing is this sort of license to operate. That's quite a complex thing, and it applies more to some companies like Alcoa, BHP, than it does to possibly the smaller miners.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much a truism. Right?
It is, and Ben, I think you're probably working in a space that hasn't been explored fully to what's the incentive to start to employ these technologies to try and hedge against risk. The new offsets policy, if you go back and reread it several times at a state level, is actually, as you read the intent, is quite powerful. From a couple of points of view, there's wording in there that says, regardless of, and this is how I interpret it, regardless of who's doing your monitoring of your offset, in the end, what the outcome from that offset is your responsibility as the proponent. The next one is that the offset that you have agreed to be involved with is open to the public. And with this type of technology, me sitting as Joe Public, I can actually start having a look at some aspects of the performance of an offset and make some decision about whether or not I'm seeing a risky situation. So with Landsat Archive, people tend to deride it as not being a very precise or accurate tool, but if I look at it, I can say, well, I think that the risks here are changing. And if that's your offset, and that includes government as well, because they're usually buying in on the agreement, then publicly at some point there is a risk that individuals are going to start looking at this themselves. So that brand issue will become potentially something that needs to be considered.
Would that be an incentive not to invest in better technology that's available?
Yes, I agree with you. So as a manager, if I was a manager and I thought my reputation's being challenged by this, then the last thing I would want is the evidence to be easily gained. So to me, that's a really big risk. But I think and probably through agriculture that the drivers will continue to come. It'll come to the point where there are certain, I guess, some of those sustainability risks that we face as a country. We actually do need that technology and that ability to synthesise information for other sectors in the economy, particularly agriculture and food security. As we go, say, 50 or 100 years into the future, that'll spill over into an environment I would have thought. But Rohan was right, that environment in the sequence of drivers there, the environment's at the end. So in my direct dealings, in some places you can see, well, a manager actually doesn't want to see the environment. They really don't want to be able to see that, because when the evidence starts coming up, you can't make a gut decision.
Thank Rohan, and thank you for coming.